Are you ready to navigate the new way to work? Forbes Books presents Dare to Care in the Workplace with Kathleen Quinn Botaw. Here's Kathleen.
Thanks for joining me once again for my conversation with Dr. Carol Swain, the author of award-winning books and articles relevant to understanding our culture. She is also the founder of Unity Training Solutions, which was launched to provide alternative DEI training for corporations, churches, and schools. And we'll talk about that in a bit. But first, Carol, I wanted to ask you about Black Lives Matter and critical race theory. You've been a vocal critic of both of those, and a few years ago, students petitioned to have you suspended or subjected to sensitivity training. Whereas most people would have placated them, you took the opposite approach. When did you become comfortable fighting back against the status quo?
Well, let me tell you that discomfort in the university came earlier. In 2011, my university, Vanderbilt, adopted a policy that Christian groups could not require their leaders to have faith statements or codes of conduct. And so it meant that to be a leader of a Christian organization, you did not have to affirm a belief in Jesus Christ, nor could they have scriptures in their bylaws or constitutions that say that you had to live a certain lifestyle. And so I was part of a group of students and a handful of faculty people that fought back against that between 2011 and 2013. By then we had lost, but not without putting up a big fight where we had 35 members of Congress sign a letter asking the university to restore the religious liberty of Christian students. And we were all over the news. The students that were working with me graduated, because a lot of them were undergraduate. So that happened in between 2011 and 2013. 2015, I wrote an opinion piece in the local newspaper criticizing Islam. And it was right after the Charlie Hebdo attack that occurred January 7th, 2015. I wrote my opinion piece January 15th, 2015. And it set off a firestorm, and it set off the protests. And what happened was, I was attacked for being an Islamophobe. But then the LGBT students got involved and said I was also a homophobe, because you can't be one without the other, right? And so that's when the petition was put out, and they actually could not find a student in my classroom that would say that I was any of those things. And I had always had good relationships with my gay students. And in fact, a graduate school student had attended one of my classes and recorded all the lectures, and I didn't know that. But when I was attacked, he told me that he was gay. I didn't know that at the time, and that he had recorded all my lectures, and that he had told the faculty that I didn't do any of the things that they said, that I did, that he had never heard me say anything like what some people were saying. And the opposition to me was not as local as it was national. It was like conservative professors, and there were 5 of us across the country that were targeted. So that happened first. So that's 2015. Well, 2016, I was on CNN, and this was right after the 5 Dallas police officers were slain. And I was there to talk about Black Lives Matter in a debate with Areva Martin, a lawyer from LA. And I did my research in that I went to Black Lives Matter website, and I was shocked and stunned by the Marxism and the fact that it had almost nothing to do with Black people. It was all about the LGBT agenda and about getting rid of prisons and police. And this was like 2016. So when I went on the television, I said that they were a destructive force in our society. And I was the first to call them out as Marxists. Well, once I did that, that created another firestorm, because up until that time, the Black faculty and students had stayed out of the fray. Once that happened, it was like I united all the groups. And I made a decision myself that I could not be my best self if I was in an academic environment, because I looked at my age, my likely lifespan, my level of stress, And I made a decision. I contacted the dean and I said, this is not working. Pretty much I want a divorce. Mm-hmm. And I had a very nice dean, and she worked out the arrangement, and I took early retirement.
Good for you. And now that leads us to Unity Training Solutions.
Well, I also have to tell you that it was a scary thing to do, because if you're a professor and that's been your life for 30 years, it's the whole idea of walking away from the only thing you know how to do was pretty scary.
Took a lot of courage.
Well, and God has really, redeemed that situation and blessed me. But I had at least 2 years of uncertainty and wondering where I could get a job, and applying for a couple of jobs at a university and a private school and not getting hired. And so it was a couple of years of uncertainty. But I look back today, and it's one of the best things I've ever done in my life. It was such a good decision. And you asked me about Unity Training. That idea for the organization was birthed last summer in August. I was preparing for a talk to be given at the Council on National Policy. And I was on a panel with Bob Woodson and Star Parker. And, they were heavyweights. They'd been on the big stage before. That was my first time on the big stage. But I was preparing for that talk, and I had a very restless night. And the restlessness had to do with the rioting that was taking place across our country. And by then, I think it had been going on for like 50 days in a row. And I saw all these corporations, one after another, just pour money into Black Lives Matter and into organizations that I thought had the wrong approach. And I did not feel that what they were doing would ever bring about any kind of racial reconciliation. But I can tell you that it was a restless night, and I just tossing and turning, and I heard unity training. And so being the entrepreneur that I fancy myself, I got up first thing in the morning and I went to purchase the domain name Unity Training, and it was gone. And so I purchased Unity Training Solutions. So that was the idea. And when I gave my presentation, I talked about the need for Christians and conservatives to compete in that space with the diversity, equity, and inclusion trainers, to compete in that space, because what often happens is that organizations will bring in people and they will disrupt the workforce. They take organizations off their mission. They create conflict where it didn't exist before. And so my vision for Unity Training is e pluribus unum, out of many one, training that's consistent with our civil rights laws, which prohibits discrimination on the basis of race, sex, color, national origin, age, and those factors, and our Constitution's Equal Protection Clause. And when it comes to diversity, I think most people embrace diversity. And if you are a Christian, you look out at the universe, and there's no denying that God is a God of diversity. You would expect people to be as diverse as all the other creations. And so I wanted to offer a training that would educate people some, but it would keep the focus on the team, what the team is producing, what is the mission of the organization, how can we get along. And so part of the training that my organization is offering is the part about the civil rights movement and the laws that have been passed, when it comes to protecting women and racial and ethnic minorities, but it also protects white people. And that's why we have to be very careful that we have not gone to the point that we have such reverse discrimination that we trade one form of illegal, immoral, unconstitutional discrimination for another. My idea is a successful training is when people leave inspired, optimistic, ready to work on behalf of the organization, with some tools that help them become better communicators, better workers, whatever their goals are, but it doesn't disrupt the workplace. And I feel like there has to be options, that it can't be just one shoe fits all, especially when years of research shows that diversity training, as they do it today, doesn't work.
Totally agree with you. And in my new book, Dare to Care in the Workplace, I have 2 chapters that speak to what you're talking about right now. The first one is have a little faith in me, have the courage to have faith, have the courage to talk about it. And the other one is leading with empathy. Empathy is a hard thing for people to achieve. And does your training at Unity Training Solutions encompass those kind of empathetic training? Listen with compassion and out without judgment to someone else's point of view.
Let me tell you that I'm in the process now of writing a book about the birth of Unity training and why it's needed. And from that book comes the curriculum. And I've had a few clients, but my curriculum is not fully developed. And the clients I've had have been in the educational realm, and so it's more like one-on-one, or advising people that are in situations where they're being pressured to go in a direction that's against their values and principles. So I would love to have your book and read it, because I'm in the process of fully developing my idea. And my vision is for it to be like Dale Carnegie courses. My approach is very much based on values and principles and things that I believe do make for harmony, and key to that is respecting each person's individuality and who they are and where they come from and what they bring and their uniqueness, that you can embrace all of that. But at the same time, you would never want to create a workplace where some people are diminished or alienated because of their political party or their sex or race or anything about them. That the workplace should not be a place where these things come into play. They should be focused on the mission of the organization.
Mission of the organization, and also embracing all the beautiful differences we all have, because that makes the journey so much more beautiful when you can bring together people who come from different walks of life, who can contribute to the team and the mission of the company.
Well, I would love to have a copy of your book, because I'm literally writing and hoping to get my book out in a couple of months. And I
will send you both of my books. I wrote 2. One called Solve the People Puzzle. That was my first book. And then born out of that, as you know, as a writer yourself, was Dare to Care in the Workplace, my most recent book. So I most certainly will send that to you, Dr. Swain. What is the advice, especially for business leaders out there, that you would give to them as they look all of these messages in the eye right now and try to build a different kind of organization? What message would you give to them and how they should treat their employees?
Well, first of all, I would say to them to be true to their own values. And I find that there are many companies that started off as small family businesses that have grown into multi-million-dollar, maybe even billion-dollar corporations. And the bigger they get, the further they get away from those values and principles that help them rise to where they are today. The job of the CEO or the owner to set the tone for the organization. And sometimes they delegate maybe to the wrong persons, because we see corporations that have been associated with a particular set of values and principles, and then all of a sudden they do something shocking. And it's because they have delegated authority to someone that does not share their values and principles. And I think that with corporations, you're the leader. You need to convey to your employees and to your executives who the organization is, what you believe, and make sure that you're setting the right tone for everyone that is looking to you for leadership.
Totally agree with you. I call it building community, because your company is really a community built upon relationships.
Yeah, I would agree with that, but they have abused the word community.
Yes, and they've also abused the word culture.
and they're still in e pluribus unum and unity when they're using it in the opposite way from the way I would use it or you would use it. And so that makes it harder too, because it's almost like the progressives are moving in a particular direction. They study us and then they take the words and the ideas and they twist the meaning.
But the good news is there's people like you, Dr. Swain, and me who know who we are, and we will not be shaken.
That's
we will
amen.
not be shaken. So I want to thank you so much for being with me today. And you talked a lot about your mentors. One of my mentors in my life was my father. He left this earth at 92, and he always told me to shoot for the moon. If I got halfway there, he'd be proud of me. And I'd say, Dr. Swain, you have shot for the moon yourself. And let's keep shooting for the moon together. So thank you so much for being with me today. If people want to find out more about you, how do they do that? What's the best way for them to do that?
I am on all the major social media platforms, but I have websites I would direct them to. There's unitytrainingsolutions.com, and that would be for business leaders or people that would like to know more about the Unity Training Solutions vision. I have bethepeoplenews.com, and there I post blogs, videos, news clips. That's a very active page. Be the People News. Instead of We the People, it's bethepeoplenews.com. And I have a nonprofit, Be the People Nonprofit. That page shows you, what I do for the community. And then I'm on Twitter as @Carol M. Swain. I'm on Instagram and Facebook as Dr. Carol M. Swain. I'm on Getter as Carol M. Swain. And, pretty much if you Google, you find me all over the place. And my latest books are Black Eye for America, How Critical Race Theory is Burning Down the House. And then my first Christian book that was published in September is Countercultural Living, what Jesus has to say about life, marriage, race and ethnicity, gender identities, and materialism.
Well, you are a gift, Dr. Swain, and thank you for being on my podcast.
Thank you, and I look forward to meeting you.
I do too. Her name is Dr. Carol Swain, and that's it for another episode of Dare to Care in the Workplace. I hope you enjoyed the show, and if you did, make sure you take a second to subscribe so you automatically get my new shows when they drop. Also, if you have a minute, I'd love if you left me a review so more folks like yourself can discover the show. Until we meet again.
This has been Dare to Care in the Workplace. To connect with Kathleen, go to KathleenQuinnBotaw.com. Kathleen's book, Dare to Care, is available wherever books are sold. Dare to Care in the Workplace is a production of Forbes Books.